Robert Plank Show, episode 317 Business Building for Musicians and Rockstars. Use your website, email marketing, and social media to build a following with female entrepreneur musician Bree Noble. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. We're talking right now with Bree Noble, and Bree quit her corporate job as the director of finance to pursue music, and after a successful run as a touring singer and songwriter, she founded the Women of Substance Radio to promote quality female artists in all genres. That daily podcast of the same name hit number 1 in New and Noteworthy in all of its 3 categories, and number 4 audio podcast on all of iTunes. On her second podcast, Female Entrepreneur Musician, she conducts interviews with successful indie female artists. I almost said email artists, but I guess those artists could use email marketing, right? And industry pros that are both inspirational and informational. And so we're going to talk about lots of fun stuff and about Female Musician Academy. So Bree, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks.
So you're very welcome, and I'm glad you're here. And I really like kind of talking with people who are kind of in other sort of spaces and niches. Because I don't know about you, but I get so dang tired of hearing like about well, I decided to start coaching, or I decided to start helping people. Sometimes I like to kind of go into like those sort of like off the wall niches, or niches where maybe people think that there's not a lot of money to be made. So we talked a little bit about you, but you kind of tell us about like what you're all about and about this whole musician side of you?
Sure. Yeah, I agree with you. It's kind of fun because my niche or whatever, working with female musicians, has actually been written up a couple times on the internet as a quote weird niche, which I guess, there's a lot of cool niches out there that no one's thought of, and I guess this is one of them. So I really love serving female independent artists and getting them to think more like business people, more like entrepreneurs, because a lot of them are super creative, super talented, but they're not running their musician business like a business. And so, they're not making the kind of progress that they want. And, they're just kind of like basically throwing, spaghetti at the wall, and they don't have a plan.
Right. And it seems like just like a lot of these sort of like more artisty types, like they either don't want a plan, they like kind of just want the chaos to kind of end up wherever it's at, or it feels like sort of a space where it's like there's so much competition, and if you don't know the right people, then it's like really hard to kind of get anyone to sort of pay for anything. And I can relate to this sort of because I'm like a computer programmer, and a lot of computer programmers when I was young, they were very like career minded, right? They were like, well, let me just put in these hours and let me get this like $40,000 a year job, and maybe I can trade it to like a $45,000 a year job. And a lot of that sort of like having to get over the confidence and like the marketing, I kind of had to like sort of pick that up, and the alternative was just kind of be like stuck in this sort of box, stuck in this sort of path. So is it sort of like the same with you and your clients? Is it sort of like a lot of these musicians, if they don't learn marketing, if they don't learn to get themselves out there, they'll just kind of be stuck in like the stereotypical like not making money, just kind of doing it on the side sort of thing?
Absolutely. So first of all, they resist it. A lot of them anyway, resist it big time because they think I'm a creative. I just can't plan. I can't, it's going to like cramp my style, or I don't want to do this marketing because it's going to keep me from, doing the fun stuff that I want to do, like writing music and performing. But they don't realize that if they don't work on the marketing side, then they're just eventually going to run out of money, and they're not going to be able to do this thing that they love. And, also, their music is not going to get out to all these people that would really enjoy it and love it. So, that's one of the issues. The other issue is that they don't want to commit to, doing the business thing, because I don't know what it is. They just really resist it. I don't know what the thing is. Some of them don't, though. Some of them absolutely get what I'm saying and they jump on board. And I think what it is they haven't seen it work for them because they haven't figured out a system that they like. So once they get something that works for them, and I try to tell them, like, you don't have to use Asana. Just because I use Asana, that doesn't mean that works for you. Maybe you need to have a paper planner or, whatever works for them. But once they see results, once they see that they start making money from their music. They start getting gigs because they've actually planned these things out. They've given themselves assignments to do every day to, move forward. That's when they get excited about it and they say, hey, this actually works now. Yeah, I definitely want to jump on board with this.
Cool. So, I mean, what's the usual starting point? Like when someone comes to you, I mean, like what sort of musician are they? Like, do they have like a whole band, or are they like solo guitarist? And then what do they already have in place by the time they find you?
I get all different. I get bands and I get solos and duos. Most of them have already recorded an album or two or three, and they have piles of boxes sitting in their garage that they haven't figured out how to sell because they made albums before they had a fan base. So what we end up having to do is kind of go backwards a little bit and say, okay, most of them, they don't have a website, they don't have an email list, they don't haven't built up their social media following. And so I'm like, what made you think that you'd be able to sell CDs if you made them? And most of them just thought that if they made this CD, some industry decision maker was going to find them, they were going to give them a deal and hand them everything on a silver platter, and they weren't going to have to do any of this marketing stuff because someone else was going to do it for them. So that's the major issue, that they've got this belief that the only way that they can make it, or what they're shooting for, is to get the attention of someone in the industry, a manager, a record label, that they don't need to do the marketing because that's all going to be done for them once they get a deal. And I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that have deals that said, nope, like they don't do this for you, number one. Number two, you usually can't get a deal unless you've marketed yourself enough to have a following. You need to show that you have, social media following, that you have people that come out to your shows in certain areas of the country. So if you don't build this thing first, you're going to be stuck. You're going to be stuck with a pile of boxes of CDs that you can't sell.
Interesting. So it's almost like they're looking sort of like for their big break. And I mean, and as you're describing that, I mean, it reminds me of a lot of different things. It reminds me of like other computer programmers I know who've like made a really cool piece of software and they've been working on it for years, and it's like, okay, it's been working great for you, but have you shown it to anyone? Is anyone using it? Do you have any kind of a list? Because just this cool thing, it does this thing. I mean, it's not, it hasn't really been proven to be a thing that's caught on. And I mean, like I see a lot of authors have the same sort of problem too. Like they've been working on a book for like 4 or 5 years, and they've been changing it and editing it, and they put all this 5 years into work, and then just to have a garage full of books that no one's read, because then they don't want to do the step of kind of going on other shows and marketing these books. So I mean, this sort of musician problem, I definitely I can relate to it, and I've seen it, and it also sort of reminds me of that book. There's a book like Freakonomics or something that looked at like gang members and drug dealers, and it's like the average gang member only makes about $3 an hour, like once you work in like the amount of hours they do. And so why do people become drug dealers or become actors? Because they're all looking for that big break, and they're fine with making basically minimum wage or less until they get to that point. But it sounds like a lot of people, they're just waiting for the big break, but without any sort of strategy, and they're not really making any kind of actions towards the big break aside from just putting in the time, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what happens is they just haven't realized they need to build this stuff up first, and that's just the way the music industry works now. And so once you build up your following and you've got people coming out to your shows, you've got all these fans that are ready to buy your CD when it comes out, by that time, that's when you'd be ready to be shopping for deals. But at that time, you might say to yourself, well, I'm making all this money from these things, and if I give up my rights to labels and stuff, then I won't get all the money from it anymore, and I'll get like this really tiny percentage. Plus, I won't have the control over the marketing budget, so they'll spend my money on marketing things that I might not necessarily do. So by the time people get there, sometimes they just decide, no, I want to keep my control and I want to not get a record deal.
Awesome. So even more relations to to entrepreneurs, and that part sort of reminds me of like I've built up websites in the past and got them to make a certain amount of money every single month, and I said, well, great, like I made this website, I'm going to go sell it, and the best way to kind of get a website to sell, like if you're flipping it, is to say, well, look at all this money it's making, but then if it's making all this money, then why would I sell it? Because it's
Hmm.
consistent money. I put on all this work to kind of build it up. Why would I just get rid of it? So it sounds like there's kind of there's a lot of the same sort of problems, the same sort of conundrums with musicians and entrepreneurs. So can you kind of like unpack that a little bit? Like, what are sort of the things that musicians and entrepreneurs kind of have in common, and things they don't have in common?
I think what they have in common is they're both very like creative and idea people. Entrepreneurs in general, they've got like 20 ideas a day, and it's kind of the same thing with musicians where they're constantly starting new songs. But what tends to happen is they start like 20 songs and then they never finish them because their mind is crowded up by new ideas. And so they jot those down and then they never do the work of sitting down and really plotting out the rest of that song, really crafting it, making it the best song that it can be, having other people listen to it and tweak it and get critiques and all that stuff. And it's the same with entrepreneurs. We have all these great ideas. We start this thing. Oh yeah, I'm going to start a blog about this, and because I see other people succeeding with that. Well, now I'm going to start a podcast. Well, now I really need to be on YouTube, so I'm going to start making videos. And then you do everything like half baked, and you're like a little bit here and a little bit there and never focusing on one thing. So I really encourage my artists, like, you need to pick one big goal for 90 days and you need to focus on that thing. Maybe it's finishing up this one album. This album is going to have 10 songs. So pick which those songs are, even if it's based upon some like idea snippets that you have, and just really focusing on finishing out those and then figuring out how you're going to record them. And, it's a whole process with a bunch of different steps under it, but you have to think everything out like a project and create a plan for it. That's definitely, where entrepreneurs and musicians get caught up, is that they've got a million ideas and don't execute them.
So, is there a secret to fixing that problem? I mean, it sounds so. So we all have those like tons of ideas, good at starting, not at finishing, and it sounds like we all kind of need to have that one big goal, that 90-day sprint, and kind of break things down and say, okay, instead of saying I have this huge album I need to work on, now I can reduce it to just like what are the 10 tracks I need, and then I can break those down. And so, as far as like sort of getting into that grind, is there any sort of are there any sort of secrets to that, or any sort of easy way to get into that sort of finishing mindset?
Well, I always encourage them to, get to their 5 goals. I want them to like brain dump and think of all the things that they want to do over the next year, and then whittle it down to 5. And then after that, you need to do the same kind of brain dump thing with each one. Like, okay, well, what are all the things that I need to do to actually reach this goal? Write all of those down and then kind of look them over and prioritize them based upon how easy would it be for me to do this thing. Are there any stumbling blocks in my way to get this thing done, and just prioritize them. If you can just tick off a bunch of things off the list right away, then that will, get you feeling that momentum. I also encourage them to make what I call an inspiration vault, which is like you've got all these ideas coming into your head all the time, new songs, whatever they are, ways that you can market, shows that you can do. Those are cool. Those are great. I don't want to stop you from having those, but if they don't have anything to do with your 90-day goals, I want you to write them down, put them in what I call an inspiration vault, and put them away for later. And if after 90 days you go back into that and those still excite you, then you can include them in your next 90 days.
Awesome. So that sounds like a really great way of just like locking the secrets away, and then that way you just pull out those things that are important to you now. But that way we aren't just left with like a huge whiteboard or dream board, or like a huge notebook just full of stuff, and that way we don't have to kind of look around the ideas for later to get to the ideas for now. That's very
Right.
cool.
And don't want them to think that those ideas are going to get lost, because I think they get worried like, but if I don't execute on this now, it's not going to happen because I'm excited about it. No, it's, we need to write this down and put it away, but we will get to it if it's still the right thing for you in 90 days.
Right, and that's really cool because it's like what if you put those ideas away for now, and then you focus on the 90 days for right now, like finishing that album or whatever, and then you go and you say, okay, that's done. I'll look back in the inspiration vault. If something kind of stays in there, and we keep saying, ah, that's not really pressing too much after a few times of going through that cycle, it's like, well, if an idea isn't good enough to take out of that inspiration vault, it's like, well, it's a good thing I wasn't working on that this whole time, because
Hmm.
it's not even worth my time now to pull it out, so it kind of lets me know where my priorities are.
For sure.
So, I mean, what sort of new and cutting edge possibilities are out there for musicians? Because, like, I'm not a music. I was in school band, but I'm not a musician. Have no dreams of being a musician or anything like that. But it's pretty cool, like what the little tidbits I kind of see as far as like what's out there now, as far as what people can plug into. Like I've seen, and like you have this podcast where it's just musicians and just music and stuff like that. And I've heard of like MySpace has kind of come back as a place for musicians, and now like getting an album like printed and stuff is super cheap and easy. So can you kind of like maybe give us some examples of that? Like what kind of cool things are available out there in this day and age for musicians?
Well, there's so many sites that are designed for you to, either sell your music, get it distributed, wherever. Um, give away free music in exchange for an email address. Like you can now do that on your own website, just like we do as marketers. Or there's sites like Noise Trade where it's set up for that. Like people go there to learn about new music and download it in exchange for an email address because they want to stay in touch with these artists. Um, as you said, like it's really cheap to make an album now. You can just go to disc makers, upload all your art, upload all your, wave files, and your CDs will show up at your door in 2 weeks. It's amazing what you can do as an artist. But really, the major things are all the things that we do as marketers that musicians can use. Things like Facebook Live. I mean, I just can't even believe that you can have a show, or you can get that direct to your fan base easily now, live on video. It's basically you can do live concerts from your home to anyone in the world. Things like, connecting with people using Facebook Messenger, using text reminders for concerts. There's just like so many cool, up and coming tech marketing stuff that musicians can use.
Cool. So so there's all these tools, and when you have some like new client come to you, is there a usual sort of like checklist or usual things you have them sort of set up? I mean, like you mentioned, like Facebook Live and like text reminders, but are there like specific things? Like, do you say like they should, get themselves set up on iTunes or on like SoundCloud or Spotify, or are there like certain things that you have them set up, like this blog and this email list, like any sort of like checklist like that you have for your clients?
Yeah, I kind of take them through a five-stage, career path. And truthfully, I don't need to tell most of them to get on CD Baby, get on iTunes, Pandora, all those. They have already done that. What they haven't done is built themselves a home base online. So a lot of them have no website. They've been using social media as a website, or they have a really old, out-of-date website. It's not any place that you'd want to send people. It doesn't represent them as an artist well. So, I encourage them to start out with making sure that they're clear on their branding, the kinds of people that like their music so they know how to find them online, creating their, little piece of land online with a website that really well represents them and is well branded, has all their music available for sale and, for streaming, and allows people to connect with them by giving an email address for a free song. I mean, that's like the base that everyone should have. And then we talk about, after that, how you're going to start getting PR. Start with your local area and then branch out from there. Definitely start with Facebook Lives, at least in the first or second stage, and really drawing your audience in that way and allowing them to engage with you online. And then another thing I love to encourage them to do is to start doing house concerts. Like if they are not familiar with performing that much at first, I encourage them to go out and do open mics and coffee houses and stuff, get really comfortable on stage, get really good at communicating with the audience, and then move into something a little bit bigger like house concerts where it's still a very informal environment, but they get a lot of experience to interact with the audience as well. And then they can move to the bigger venues.
Awesome, and I mean, I'm just hearing so many sort of parallels to being an entrepreneur because I mean, like there are entrepreneurs out there who like they want to speak on stage, they want to speak in front of a huge audience, and it's like, well, no one's just going to drop that in your lap. You have to kind of build yourself up first, and you have to do your own marketing and show people that you can get that kind of following on your own. And I definitely can relate to like sometimes I have this problem or sometimes I deal with other entrepreneurs who have this problem where they've gone through at one point or another, like you said, and like set up different things, right? Set up a website here or set up a Facebook page there, and then either kind of left it alone or they've all been set up at different times, and now things are sort of out of date. And so I think that having people make that home base and sort of clean that up and make it sort of look good, and instead of just throwing a bunch of stuff on a page, ask for an email address in exchange for a song. And so as far as like that part of it, as far as like going back and like kind of looking back on what you set up and kind of clean it up and update it and make sure that it all kind of fits together and makes sense. I mean, do you have any sort of mindset kind of tricks on that? Because I know that whenever I go back and I look at my blog or I look at old websites, I get sort of discouraged. I just think like, oh man, this is the thing I set up like back in the day, and after I set it up, it made a bunch of money. But now that I'm going back to clean it up later, now it's like it's sort of, I don't know, it's discouraging to try to like clean stuff up because I'm like, well, I don't know if this is going to take 10 minutes or 10 hours, and I'm not really sure when I'll be done. So any sort of advice on that whole kind of cleanup phase of things?
I mean, I don't know. I think it really isn't as big of a job as we make it out to be. Just have all your assets created. Like make sure, go and, make sure your branding is all uniform, and then go create all those assets in Canva or whatever you want as far as like images for, your cover art for Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Get those all done in advance so you're not like every time you move to a new platform, like, okay, now I need to go create one in this size. Just go do it all, have it all there, and then just go across the board and update everything exactly the same. Like have your little part of, your shorter version of your bio that you're going to use on, say, Twitter or Instagram, few sentences, have that figured out already, and then just pop that in there. Like it's just a lot easier if you have all the assets in one place and then you just go click, 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 and it's all done pretty quickly.
Cool, makes a lot of sense. So have those all in there, and then that way you can just kind of replicate that. And so
Yeah.
so people should be have their home base, have their branding, and then kind of work their way up from Facebook Live to like bigger and better stuff. And so and you mentioned in there like have that sort of squeeze page, and someone can opt in. And so do you teach your musician clients like all the marketing stuff? Like do you tell them like to have an email campaign and like a launch sequence and all that kind of fun stuff?
We don't get too much into launch sequences until they start to do things like crowdfunding, which is actually a little further down the line for most of them. I encourage them not to go into that until they've got at least 1,500 people on their mailing list, because you're not going to get people on your mailing list from a crowdfunding campaign in general. You need to have people to go out to for that. That already like you. But I do teach them, I encourage them to have, depending on how many people they've got on their lists at different levels, make sure they communicate with them once every 2 weeks or once a week at least, because a lot of them they don't like sending out emails that makes them feel uncomfortable because they're not used to, sales and marketing and stuff like that. So I encourage them once they get to a certain level to definitely do blogs, videos talking about, kind of behind the scenes kind of stuff. And I always encourage them, whatever they do, only have one call to action. Because what I see with musicians is they send out this like gargantuan newsletter at the beginning of the month with about 10 different things in it. And then they don't send anything for a month. And for me, it's not working, because whenever I get one of those, I'm like, oh, I'm sure this is really cool and interesting stuff, but this looks really long, so I'm going to put it to the side. and then it just goes to the bottom of my inbox and I never have time to read it. Whereas if you have something, that comes out once a week and it's about one thing, here's my new video, go watch it. Here's my new blog about how I wrote my new song, here's my new, single, go listen to it here and then you can buy it on iTunes, just one thing at a time. Here's something about here's my new interview that I had in the newspaper, and not try to pack everything all into one email. That's a big thing I have to kind of change their mindset about.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense to me. And I think that sort of thing of having the big long newsletter. I mean, I'm sure that worked great in like the late '90s, and I think back to those days. And like back then, when I got something in email, I'd be like, "Whoa, let me stop everything I'm doing because whoa, an email came in." And then nowadays, like some marketers will still send a big long thing, and if they send like a 5-page PDF, I'm just scrolling through that PDF just to find like the one little part in that document that I'm looking for. And so it's like when they send the big long thing, like I'm only looking for a little tidbit anyway. Why not just send me the tidbit? And then, yeah, like you said, like if I keep getting a big long thing and I end up like not opening and not looking for something, then I slowly kind of get trained to not open that person's email just because they sent like too much, not often enough. And then if they just kind of split it up, and if they sent those little tidbits like once a week or even a couple times a week, I'd get that training back. I'd get trained again to open and to read. But yeah, when there's like a bunch of stuff and then not enough, I kind of lose the regularity with them, and then I end up not opening their emails. And next thing I know, I'm saying, well, this is like the 10th time that I've seen their email come in, but I've kind of pushed it off for later because I haven't opened it. Why am I even on their list? The next step for me is to just kind of hop off their list. So I mean,
Yep.
it sounds like that a lot of musicians are kind of still marketing like when internet marketing was new. They're still marketing like it was 10, 20 years ago, and they need to kind of get caught up to date and to do all those things that actually make money, as opposed to like the GeoCities sort of set of activities.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard someone say like you're marketing like it's 1999. Like that's so true. I think those long newsletters did used to be cool and popular, and people think that they need to have flashy newsletters with backgrounds and a whole bunch of images and all that stuff. And I'm like, no, like people generally don't want that anymore. They just want a quick thing, usually text only, maybe with one image, and that's it.
Cool. I mean, good to know that. And then once people can kind of get on that track, they can keep doing, more of that. And so, we talked before you came on the show. We talked a little bit over email that you do stuff with Facebook ads for musicians, and that really sort of interests me. So, can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm in the midst of creating this course that's coming out in June called Facebook Ads for Music, or Facebook Ads Made Easy for Musicians. And the reason I wanted to create this is because I know that they're dabbling in Facebook ads. They've told me, and it hurts me to hear the way that they're doing it because they have no strategy. They are just like trying stuff. They don't even have any way of knowing if it's working or not. And so I want to create a Facebook ads program for them that helps them take fans on a journey, what I call the fan discovery journey, from like someone that's never doesn't know anything about your music before, but they're a good possibility to getting connected with you, then getting to know you a little bit through different kinds of maybe videos or Facebook Live, and then taking them into a retargeting where you get them to go get your free song, and then other things in the future. But that they're not thinking in that mindset. They're just like, I think I need to get people to like me because that's what I've been told. And then they do that, but then they don't know what that's getting them. So I'm trying to make it very systematized for musicians so they don't have to like learn every single thing in the back end of Facebook. They know exactly what kind of ads they need to do and when to bring this fan along this journey.
Awesome. So in other words, sort of treating it like a real business and taking those things that work as far as Facebook ads with other businesses, like there's always some sort of like educating those customers into getting them to the point where they're ready to buy. And it sounds like with musicians, it's kind of similar with the fans, like educating them, so to speak, as far as like hearing a little bit about like your music or your songs, or getting them to opt in, or retargeting them with that pixel. It just sounds like there's so many different similarities, because I think that a lot of online marketers, business owners, they kind of, I mean, I'm hearing, just it's feeling sounding so familiar when you're explaining that, because like a lot of online business people I hear, like they kind of like dabble as well. They'll say, oh well, I'm going to run an ad to everybody, or everybody within a 10-mile radius, and then wonder why the advertising is not working. And it's like, well, because you advertise to everybody, not to these little niches, and not to these little interests, and definitely not to the people who visited your site. So I mean, I'm just hearing like a lot of those things that work for us marketers seems like they work with musicians. And so we're starting to sort of run out of time, but one thing I'm really curious about as far as this is, does this work like better with musicians, just because like there's not a lot of competition and people aren't used to like seeing this kind of stuff, or is it the same, or like how does musicians marketing compare to like these other niches?
I don't know if it works better, but it works well. And I think that with musicians, we can only go so many places to perform live. But the ability now to use Facebook Live to perform to anybody in the world, like that just expands your horizons so much as a musician, to be able to expand your fan base beyond, just the US or wherever it is that you travel. Maybe you only travel within your own state. I mean, that's how I was when I performed. I pretty much stayed in California and Oregon a few times, but I didn't want to travel to Europe. But I don't have anything against having fans there, you know. So I do think that it's expanded the horizons for musicians so much. And it's because we can perform live. Like with business, you're just trying to deliver value and you're trying to teach them something. But with performing, you can really get that connection when you're live on video that is like being at a live concert. And so I think it does work really well for engaging fans and moving them along that journey, even better than business maybe, because we have the ability to like use that creative artistic angle.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it seems almost like more. I don't know if you call it more like socially acceptable, or like more shareable. But it's like, if I go out and if I buy like a course on real estate, I'm not really going to share that with my friends, right? If I go and like
Mm.
buy like a Tony Robbins course, I'm not going to share that. People are going to make fun of me. People are going to call me like a nerd or something. But if you kind of share, like the someone's live stream of like your favorite like local musician, that seems kind of different, right? That seems like easier to kind of spread than, hey, check out this business course I just bought.
That is so true. I mean, entertainment is something that people love to share and, it has more of an opportunity to go viral.
Cool, I agree. And so, as we're sort of starting to wind down our talk here, when you deal with all these musicians and people like that, are you seeing like a number one mistake, or like a number one just universal missed opportunity from all these people?
Ugh, there's so many, but yeah, I mean, I would say the number one mistake is what I talked about earlier, creating a CD, thinking and investing all this money, thinking that as soon as you have that CD, that's going to be your vehicle. But it's not. Your fan base is your vehicle to sell CDs and, do live shows and actually make money, not the actual recording of the CD. The
Awesome.
CD does not create fans.
Right, and that's such good advice. And I mean, I know that I listed a couple of examples before, but even like, I help some people make membership sites, and I just hear over and over, like, I've made all these videos, I've made 2 years worth of content. And it's like, well, is that, have you marketed that? Are people using that? Is that something people want? Is it catching on? Well, if the answer is no, because zero people have seen it, then maybe get yourself out there. And I've also heard like from like bloggers and content creators and people like that like you should spend like 20% of your time creating, and then 80% of your time marketing. And that's not to say like you don't spend that much time creating, but if you're spending 20 hours a week marketing, well, maybe spend more than 20 hours a week, or so yeah, spend 20 hours a week marketing, spend more than that getting the stuff out there. Because I mean, if no one else is coming in listening to it, then I mean, what's sort of the point of it, right? Like, you'll make the
Yeah,
best
oh
music
yeah,
ever, no one heard it.
I was just thinking of that statistic about 80% marketing, 20% creating. I mean, and that's really hard to get across to musicians. And it's hard for them to do because it takes a lot of effort and brain power and focus to write songs and to be a good performer. So it is hard to give up 80% of your time to marketing.
Right, and it seems sort of frustrating that a lot of, I mean, like the average person like can't even doesn't even know like how much time that was, right? They just see like what's on the surface. They just see like the finished product. So it feels like there's almost like a an ego sort of thing to say like, well, I slaved away on this part of it. Shouldn't people notice that? And it's like, well, people care about what that finished product is. So I mean, it makes a lot of sense, and a lot of light bulbs are going off as you're explaining that. And like I said, I don't want to keep you for too long, but I want to make sure that everyone knows everything that you have going on, because a lot of this sounds really interesting, like Facebook ads for musicians and coaching for musicians and female musicians especially. So can you kind of tell us what you have going on, and if someone listened to us talking today, where should they go to find out about what you have going on?
Absolutely. So the best place to go is the femmusician.com website, which stands for Female Entrepreneur Musician. F as in female, E as in entrepreneur, musician.com. You can go there to femmusician.com/income and grab our 19 proven sources of income that you probably haven't considered for your music business if you're a musician. And that's where that's kind of our hub for all of the. So if you're interested in our membership site and coaching program for female artists, which is the Female Musician Academy, you can find that there. You can find different training programs we have on goal setting. As I said, the Facebook Ads Made Easy course is coming out in June. So that will be available there. And then our free podcast, we actually have a Facebook Live show that turns into a podcast every week. Plus, we have interview shows twice a month as well. So we've got 6 podcasts a month coming out on that platform. And it's just really, really great information. So check that out as well, all at that website.
Awesome. So not only are you teaching musicians how to do it, but you're actually doing it with all the podcasts, the blogging, and all that stuff. And so femusician.com for femmusician.com, FEMUSICIAN.com. And yeah, you're right. Everything's there. The Female Musician Academy, the podcast, the blogs. And then, so if someone comes to the site and they check it out and they say, whoa, like there's all this number one training on how to, get myself out there as a musician, lots of things that you're doing right where people can kind of see how you're doing it. And then if someone says, I really like what Bree has to say, I want to reach out to her and contact her for some coaching, where can people go to do that?
They can definitely go ahead and email me at Bree, BREE, at femmusician.com, and we'll get back to you with whatever you need.
Awesome, good stuff. So check out that site. If you like what you see, if you want to take things to the next level, then that email address is bree@femmusician.com, BREE@femmusician.com. So check out those places, femmusician.com/income, to see those 19 sources of income that you can be tapping into as a musician. Check out femmusician.com itself to see the podcast and get some ideas and see what Bree is up to. And then if you need to reach out to her, then email her at bree@femmusician.com. So lots of cool stuff today. I always like to kind of do some more of like the off the wall stuff and talk about these other industries where people might not have thought that they can, do a podcast about their music, Facebook Live about their music, have a blog and an opt-in page and Facebook ads and all these cool things, all these things that we can do for our own business or for some of the nerdy, business niches. You can do for some of the more entertaining stuff like live music in whatever aspect that is. And so lots of possibilities here and lots of cool stuff. And I also appreciated, Bree, just kind of hearing about your mindset as far as about when you have these coaching clients, what they have set up, what possibilities are there, and what they're doing wrong, what they're doing right. So lots of really interesting stuff. So I want to thank you for stopping by the show today and sharing some of this unique wisdom. So appreciate that, and thanks for coming by.
Thank you. It's been really fun.
I had fun too. And everyone, make sure to go to femmusician.com. Thanks and bye now. Thanks for listening to today's program. Start from the beginning or view past episodes at robertplank.com/episodes.